If I had two candidates and I had someone who knows how to do the job very well, but the attitude wouldn't be in the best place, and I had someone who would be a bit more junior, but wanting to learn, being up for a challenge with a bit of a can-do attitude, I think I'd probably go to the attitude bit. For me, the most important thing in motivation or a process of motivation is the meaning or the meaningfulness of the job that we're doing.
It's like there is, I know it's a cliche now, but there's no I in team.
My name is Jarosław Kareslak.
I'm Kamil Kramic.
I'm a professor of biostatistics at Indiana University in the United States.
I'm a supply chain expert with a focus on global transformation projects.
I primarily deal with more efficient use of data coming from medical experiments.
I'm passionate about leadership, continuous improvements, and culture in the global business landscape.
So just wanted to say that all the opinions in this podcast are our own and they do not represent the institutions that we're associated with.
So we meet again. We're still in Dublin. We're still in Ireland. What we're going to talk about today?
So I thought you mentioned like the efficiency, the persistence versus stubbornness, how do you choose your team? It's not only about us, it's about the people who actually will do the work.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you can have the best objectives and the best projects and the best technology.
Best ideas.
But
somebody has to do it.
But without people, at least for now, without people, there's absolutely no way you can deliver that. And
funny thing you said, at least for now, because I kind of guessing what you wanted to touch upon, and this will be a topic of one of the next episodes. It's like tools like AI tools, like ChatGPT. So we're doing too much of that. We can guess what the other person wants to say. That's getting scary, but that's actually great.
You think so? Okay, I'll go with that as well. I was mentioning AI, so you're completely right. But let's leave AI for now. It might naturally come to the conversation because it always does. Even if you talk, I'm starting to think even if you buy groceries in your local shop, you're going to start to have AI conversations soon with people there. But let's leave it for now. Let's talk about people, the most important element of any projects, any resources you need to get people, and how do you choose the right team for your project, for your business, for a place like that? I think that question is huge, and especially with
you know what I would say?
Yeah.
It depends.
It does depend.
But
you haven't said it for a while now.
Yeah.
Okay. It does depend.
But that I think goes to the center or to the core of what you are going to say. So I'll let you.
No, I don't think I wanted to explain to me. I was asking or stating more questions rather than answers, because obviously this has been. This is a part of knowledge of business and a number of books on how to choose the right team, how to keep them motivated, how to make sure that we get the most out of the group of people that we have is a big topic, and it will remain a topic for I think a long time, because the world is changing again as well, and people. I'd say people are changing, but actually the beliefs, the values, the actual things that we want to get out of life, I think, are changing in time, but also in geography as well.
Another thing is generationally. This is, so what you said with people are changing. It's actually interesting. And again, I'm not trying to sound too philosophical here, but I think actually people are not changing as fast as the environment is changing, as the differences seem to be bigger generationally than even the people kind of changing, like we changing personally versus everything around us is changing so fast that, I don't say an old guy, but, not the youngest one.
You're not old.
And the thing is that it's just harder to keep up with things. To give you an example, because sometimes we are going kind of more on a kind of this generalizations. I just attended a conference in Brighton in UK, and there was a talk by one of the big people in statistical computing. And he was presenting on this new data format that's actually great and everybody's using now. And I'm like, seriously, I still work with like Excel files or CSV files, which are still the most common ones. And with these new formats, it's like, what does it mean? Do I have to change all my kind of work and how I do things with this new bright shiny thing? And I was like, no, maybe my students will do it, but this is almost like too fast for me. The pace of that I have to keep up with and with the new things that I have to learn, it's a bit exceeding the pace I like to work at.
Okay. But is it, when you say the pace, is it just the speed of work, or is it
No.
efficiency? So can you get to the out with this? You've called the new bright, the new shiny thing. I have absolutely, I have no idea what a statistical computing is, but I'm guessing it's there for a reason. Yeah.
Well, it's just formatting of the files.
Right.
So I still might do my presentations in PowerPoint, even though more people are moving to like kind of online tools. Or this file formats, or just the delivery of your presentations, or what you say, or maybe I'm crossing onto your world. Let's say you have a scheduling system that might be completely automated, but it's changing. In the old times it would change every few years maybe, or you would add some bells and whistles to existing tools. Now it seems every year or two you have to change how you think about, designing things or leading things, because the outside world is changing so fast.
It's almost like, it reminds me of like the programmers or developers' work. You used to have, or you still have, you'll have they'll specialize in a specific language. Yes, you're gonna go whatever. I'm not gonna try to figure out the Python, the sort of a Java, and all of the other bits. It starts to sound like in your world as well. It's almost like it's your field of study, but also which platforms, analysis and presentations you're equipped with, or you skilled in, and almost. Do you think that there could be a scenario where you actually don't fit in a team because you're just not working on, I don't know what the examples are there, but Excel versus the sort of online tools you've mentioned around there. It's like another angle of the language that you actually talk or exchange information in.
So if those things also, and I know today we're not talking about AI tools, but I'm not saying it's becoming irrelevant what kind of language you program in, but it's more the way of thinking. That's still, I think humans were still better at that. Again, I know we're touching on this topic, but there will be another episode on kind of how AI influences our work both in business and in academia. But here, it's going back to this choosing the team. And what's important, like some of the things we'll talk about, is kind of how do we motivate people. And it's almost different motivating people at different stages of their careers, different ages, different, like was adjusting what we do depending on who we have on our teams.
Okay, all right. I wonder if it's because I have another statement. I have a one statement and a one truth which I'm trying to live by, not only work by, but live by. And obviously, money motivates people, and we can touch on that area as well, and the sort of a motivational system. But for me, the most important thing in motivation, or a process of motivation, is the meaning or the meaningfulness of the job that we're doing. And it might mean completely different things for completely different people. It might be you're actually doing something. I mean, we've talked in the previous one around the rockets or whatever. You're sending you're sending people on the moon, but it might be that you actually are able to change your working environment and the few meters around you, and actually make that work more efficient just because of your way of thinking. I'm getting to like the manufacturing areas, or maybe a low level places. So I'm guessing why I wanted to talk about it with you as well, because I think the meaning or the importance of the work in your area of research, or in your industry, let's call it, it's probably, you can find it much easier, or at least I thought of you probably are able to find it easier.
But again, this goes back to the team. So just to give you just one example from my work, it's I study concussions or mild traumatic brain injury in college athletes. University athletes, college in the States is like the university in the rest of the world. And especially if you've ever seen kind of American football game, there is a lot of events where there's very high contact between the players.
Of course.
So there might be,
that's the game, isn't it?
That's the game, yes. So we collected data where the helmets were actually equipped with sensors that were recording the level of the impact, or how high of an impact that was.
Like a G level or something?
Yes. So it was actually acceleration, it was in G levels, and actually those accelerations, you might be scared, but they can reach 100, 150 G, which if you think about, 1 G versus 10 G versus 100 G, it's like you had in the movies with, flying like high speed planes where you reach acceleration of like 10 G. This was like the maximum. But this is continuous, or, for some period of time.
Right.
Here it's instantaneous. So it's like the hit, and, so it instantaneously goes to, let's say, 80, 100 G, and then it drops immediately. This is in the space of milliseconds. But where I'm going with that, okay, this is a sensor that's recording such impacts, but everything it's not perfect. So we had actually videos of such games. So somebody would be watching a video, concentrating on a player, trying to so-called video verify those impacts.
Okay.
Think about it. Each player, they had to watch for like 2-3 hours. And we had 20 players. So they had to watch the same video 20 times to match what we recorded, or to see, with this video verifying, to record, what they were seeing in this film. Now, how do you motivate people doing it?
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Yes, and we have, like research assistants doing that. Well, what's important for them is this is done for a purpose. It's not just, this is this kind of this menial job and so on, but what's the purpose? How do we actually decrease the injury? How do we decrease the number of concussions? And this serves bigger purpose. It's not just somebody sitting in the dark room, doing something for tens or maybe 100 hours, but it's done for a purpose.
It's the
meaning, the purpose.
It's the meaning is really clear at the beginning, and it's actually, I'm doing a hard job and actually pushing myself now for a really great cause, and okay, that's a really good example, because if you think. If you think in my world, those kind of jobs which are sometimes dull in nature, and AI may be solving them in the future.
Might be.
We're going to count how many times we use the word in this context. But actually, you're right. What I found quite a lot in the COVID time, and I work in a hot beverage industry as well. It's obviously we had a number of factory workers still. Their world hasn't changed. They had to go to work. I mean, you can't produce without having people
remotely,
producing. You can't produce remotely. So actually having a context of a cup of tea being a very important moment of everyone's life, especially in times when it's difficult. So what do? You sit down with your family when you talk about difficult subjects, or when you're sad, or when you have to make a decision. There's usually a cup of something nice there, and providing the context of how important the actual job is to have certain things on the shelf that people can buy, just made a complete difference to how you could, you know, how I felt going into work and driving through completely empty streets around there. That was a positive, actually. That was a really quick. That was much quicker.
Yeah.
I was getting to work much quicker. But on a serious note, I think it made a massive difference to how people really looked at going to work. But yeah, go on.
I can give you another example. I think a few examples might be actually useful here, because this was a very different thing that you were doing. You know, it's maybe one more example from my work where we actually had trouble motivating individuals to actually to do the work. I work a lot with data, and data needs to be cleaned. So it's not just you collect data and it can be immediately used for kind of scientific purposes. So also motivating people who are cleaning the data. It's sometimes, of course, we have tools and so on, but sometimes it is getting dull and boring, and you know. But again, doing that for a bigger purpose, that will help down the kind of the pipeline of what we're doing in helping in improving health of people, or you know, understanding why we do certain things. That's important. I think for every human, no matter where we work, we can be working on the factory floor, we can be working for NASA or for, you know, another place. It's just the purpose, the meaning of what we do, that it serves not just this immediate purpose, that is this number 52.5, you know, right or not, but what does it mean? What will it mean later on? That will actually influence maybe the decision that we're making.
No, absolutely. It was a good example from like the manufacturing world was around I mean, we'll come back to the World War II, but actually for manufacturing that was a big, you know, that was some of the time with the biggest some of the biggest breakthrough. But you'd have to, like, so a lot of people went to war, went to fight, and in America they had to come up with a training solution for people who wouldn't normally work in this environment. So you'd have a massive shift of people who'd normally do a completely different work, and now had to work in factories and build tanks or planes and other industrial big industrial things there. And there was this system called training within industry. And why I'm talking about it, because when we say purpose, for me, might be exactly what you're saying, building on your point. It might be something really important, which is really good to do. But sometimes it's really small. And purpose might be just the reason why you do something. And this is your point. And there was literally just the three elements for training. It was very simple, because it had to be simple. You didn't have time to, you know, create massive systems or and also technology at that time was probably pen and paper and a few things like that. And it just set the three elements around how to do certain stuff. But the last one was, why do you do it? And when you went to machine, and even, you know, I don't know, adding a bolt somewhere, you know, the simple stuff that you had, it always said, why does it have to be done in that specific way? What does it do different? That you understand at the end that the reason for doing it might be causing some bigger impacts later on. And actually, I quite like the idea. It's pretty old. It's pretty simple. There are much more, you know, complicated bits there. But for certain elements in the manufacturing world, I think it's the principle around, you know, knowing how to do it, being able to actually execute the task, but knowing why do you do it is at least equally important as doing the task as well.
So we talked a lot about kind of how do we motivate people, but first, kind of before we motivate them, we have to select people for the team.
Absolutely.
So I would be very interested how, you know, you do it, or how this is done in more of a your world.
Well, Jarek, it depends. That's
my phrase.
That's your phrase. We said it together. Yeah, let's treat it as our joint one. But it really does depend of what you're trying to achieve. But not only that, it also depends on a number of factors. I probably won't be able to even pick all of them. Culture of the organization that you're in is really important. I don't know, geographical sort of limitations. The actual business you're in as well, or the customers you're facing as well. So, I mean, as I talk about it, there's just this areas opening up in my mind around doing it. But what is now becoming a massive topic is also around having the diversity in the team, and I don't mean that because diversity might be from a number of angles, but even from if we just focus on the actual skill set and then attitude. It's actually having a different mix of those in your team to have a different way at looking at a problem or a solution or something like that. And for me personally, if again coming back, because I'm always asking you for a 1 or 2 sentence answer, I do believe unless you are building a rocket and you need someone to build, or you build a reactor, and it requires a very specific knowledge or a skill set to do things. I tend to choose more based on the attitude of a person rather than the skill set, because the latter can be learned. The latter you can invest in. If you have the right attitude, you can get the skill set to a certain level. However, though, there's certain areas, places, or certain jobs that you just you can't do it, and it's almost the other way around. You need to create again a safe space and a place where you almost educate the others on one person's attitude, not to almost sometimes take offense. So if we talk about an example, let's think about a engineering. I'm sure people who know the manufacturing plants, you'll have it's a high probability of finding a very skillful engineer, which is probably on the level of grumpiness higher than the average, and actually also being in the normal sort of daily operations, you can be found quite intimidating or even quite rude at certain times. And then in these cases, you almost create a system for getting the team together and starting to understand that other person's, again, maybe not a purpose, but the reason from where it's all coming from. So then the others actually start to tailor a little bit, not to take offense or not to, think that this particular person is trying to do something. So it is a mix. In general, I'd say if I had 2 candidates and I had someone who knows how to do the job very well, but the attitude wouldn't be in the best place, and I had someone who would be a bit more junior but wanting to learn, being up for a challenge with a bit of a can-do attitude, I think I'd probably go to the attitude bit. But like I said at the beginning, it does depend. And the last thing I'm going to say around it, look, in the world of HR, the methodology of how do we choose people? You'll have, starting from an interview, assessment centers. There's at least, I've used at least 3 or 4 sort of a methodologies that you can say to actually assess someone's natural behavior, sort of a pattern. One is of Hogan. There's at least a few more that you can almost bring the data to a table around what is the person's personality consist of, what are the building blocks of. So we could probably spend 5 episodes of talking about it. However, though, it still fails a lot. So with all of these things, you still see quite a lot of, at least from my experience, you still see people who walk into an organization and just thrive, and you can absolutely see how they grew, and you can see the complete opposite, and sometimes you're looking at it and say like, why? What? Every element was there, everything just clicked, but it just wasn't working. There was just something that you couldn't describe and wasn't working. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. Even in my kind of later stage of my career, I still have many mentors. I mean, many, 3 or 4. And then I would ask them actually very similar question. How do you choose, like in my world, is how do you choose your students? How do you choose, research assistants or postdoctoral fellows kind of working with you? And you think I talked with one specific one, and I said, okay, I have an okay way of kind of hiring people, but one of the things, because usually we can bring people from like far away to interview them on site, to spend a few days with them and so on. It's mostly like an hour interview on Zoom, or then we have recommendation letters and so on, but we don't have enough time that we're spending with them. So I rely a lot actually on personal recommendations.
Okay.
And this is something that I have to say, that relying on people who know somebody that I might consider hiring, and because they usually would have spent with them months or years, that resulted in much better hiring decisions.
Okay.
And again, sometimes, and I can see kind of in your world, you might have, somebody that you don't know, or it's not really switching within the company or something like that. If you hire somebody from outside, of course, you wouldn't have such a great kind of background material. I shouldn't say background material on them, but, information and so on. And even with all of that and so on, it's not guaranteed that actually somebody will be a good part of the team. But this one thing, the attitude, and especially this can-do attitude, that's a big part of a success, or being really contributing to the work and bringing ideas and being open and kind of knowing actually where would we like to go, but not necessarily this is the way that we'll be going there. So this, going back to the diversity of, it's not only skills, diversity of kind of the paths that can be taken.
Okay.
This is, I really value that in somebody.
That's, I mean, when you talk about, the recommendations, that's obviously this is a thing in the business world, one of the important ones. But I do find that might be a bit controversial here, and maybe it's a bit of a cultural thing as well. It depends where you go when you ask. I do feel that those recommendations are largely positive.
Yeah.
If you think, if I find myself into a situation where I'm being asked about someone and ask for an opinion about obviously someone's skill set and someone's in a work context, I'll say a lot if I have some really positive experience. I'll probably won't say a lot at all if it wasn't that good, or I sort of make it so ambiguous that it doesn't mean doesn't mean much as well. I mean, it might not be. Again, we go into generalization sometimes as well. It always depends, but I do see that. I do see that a lot sometimes. Yeah. But then, because we say, we like people who are similar. That's a rule, I think. You naturally go to or try to choose someone, or try to spend time with someone who's a bit more like you. At least that's what I've heard a lot from some of the HR managers and some of the courses I had it. But it is, so the can-do attitude, I'm with you. But sometimes it is probably important. It is important to also have a level of cynicism and sarcasm in the conversation, or the grumpiness, or the realism, as you can call it as well. Because if you just have a group of people who are just looking ahead and just want to get there, and everything's possible and sky is the limit, you might find yourself you're just torn into 15 different directions and you're not actually doing any real job. Yeah.
So to give you an example, and this is not my example, it's one of my colleagues and it's going back to the skill set. And so he said he would rather hire somebody who can finish projects, or in my world is like finish writing a manuscript, than somebody who is brilliant but goes in these 15 directions, but nothing is ever finished because they're just so brilliant that they are getting bored with the idea before actually there is a product based on that. So this actually gave me a lot to think that it's sometimes, in academia I would think, oh, go for the smartest, or somebody who already, like you are impressed with somebody, but then you kind of learn pretty fast that yes, it's great that they are the smartest, but that might not actually be great for the team because they might not be very nice around other people. And the more, there are those traits that sometimes or often go together. That very smart people might use their smartness for other purposes, not only for like scientific purpose, but they can manipulate people or they can treat themselves as the next thing to the higher being or something like that, which is not great for the overall kind of goal, endeavor, or teamwork.
Like the football team, you sometimes need to sack the superstar for the whole team to work much better and change that. Absolutely, yeah.
That's also another thing on that. If I can just make one point, since you mentioned football teams, or as we call them in the States, soccer teams, or whatever name we put there.
Yes.
The important part there is the team. So what's the best for the team? Then, without giving examples here, because I don't want to go into like discussions who is the best player in the world or something like that, but sometimes, as you said, it's not about the best player, it's about the team and the team winning games. So if you just concentrate on one player, the other team can adjust to that, and they just can make the work impossible for that one player, and this player will never score a goal, which is important for the team winning, yes. So it's like there is, I know it's a cliche now, but there's no I in team. Okay.
If you find the topics in the discussion interesting, please do subscribe and push the subscribe button, because that will allow us to make many more interesting subjects into our conversation.
Yeah, we will have guests, we will have, we'll talk about other interesting topics, so let us know. What do you think?
Let us know what you think and push that button, please.